All right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Michael, and I'm going to teach my drawing class today. More of a painting style drawing um, about fruit. So I had some strawberries and raspberries this morning, and I thought, ooh, the berries are coming out. The fruit's about to get great. It's already pretty good. I had a bad watermelon, though, so we'll wait for watermelon. But it's spring. It's the time of delicious food is upon us. So why not talk about painting it? I'll pull up this picture I did a couple months ago. One of my first watercolor projects. That's an artichoke. This one, yeah, on the screen there. This is a piece I did a couple months ago now. It's all watercolor and a bunch of different fruits and a rainbow. And I thought, I haven't painted fruit for a couple months, and I want to do it again. So today we're going to practice drawing fruit, and if you're at home, you can use a pencil or a pen if you want, or just watch and apply this to paints. You could do watercolor or acrylic, whatever you want. I'm not sure exactly what materials you have, but just use what you have. Crayons, or little colored pastels or crayons work great to kind of copy this painting style. So something with color would be great. Crayons, colored pencils are great as well. So let's get started here. I'm gonna pull this picture back. So I have a picture of artichoke, which isn't fruit, but I also have strawberry and raspberry. And since I've done strawberries before, I kind of want to start on the raspberry. Which strawberries and raspberries actually look pretty similar when they are blown up to the same size. I think that's something interesting about drawing or photography, is that you can take two things that are totally different size, like the Eiffel Tower and a pencil, and you could put them in a picture. They'd be the exact same size, and you can compare them based on their shape or their color. And that's what we're doing with the raspberries. We're having raspberries that are as big as strawberries here. If I go back and forth, let's see. Oh, that's an artichoke. That's my drawing. Which one? I should really label these. Huh? Yeah. If I go back and forth, yeah, look, there's a lot of similarities. It's mostly red with green leaves on top. The strawberry has seeds. The raspberry has those little juice balls. I'm not sure what you call those. Yeah. Just a slight difference in color. Strawberries are more bright red and almost an orangey red at points, whereas raspberries are more of a cool red, like a bluish red. So let's get started with this raspberry here. And first of all, we're going to do the shape. Do the shape of the raspberries. Then we're going to get into the painting. So for shapes, I like to just use a pencil first, because you can erase and make some corrections, and then you can paint right over with most things, with most types of paint. If you're very light with the pencil, you can paint over it in watercolor. Doesn't matter how hard you're pressing if you're painting in acrylics or oil, but here we go. I'm going to draw this big raspberry in the middle. I'm just gonna kind of eyeball the shape. It's not bad. Since it's a fruit, this is something different than a portrait or a car, even. Since it's a fruit and all fruits are different, I don't have to nail the shape. I'm more concerned with the color and the structure of it. But if my raspberry looks different than my reference, all the better. As long as it's still raspberry-ish. So here's this top thing, the stem. Just a basic stem shape. Again, this is kind of my under drawing is what it's called. And that's where you draw like a blueprint that you're going to paint on top of. So you don't have to be too careful with your lines, but you do have to focus on getting the shapes that you want in your final. So in the reference picture, this leaf kind of is behind the stem. I kind of want to separate the two. Just so there's a little bit of space between the stem here that I'm going to erase, and then the leaf that's next to it. There we go. Then there's a third raspberry on this side, but I think I'm going to not do that third raspberry, and I'm going to do the other leaf though. So something like that. And then there's one there. Whatever, I'll do the third one. Seems to balance out the picture. All right, so that's the general shape. I didn't spend much time on it, and yeah, you can spend more time on it if you want. But now let's get into the painting, the fun part, and most of what this video will be about. So I'm pulling up my color wheel. If you are using paints, you might only have red, yellow, and blue, or a few other colors. So you're gonna have to mix your color, but on here I can just choose. Or if you have a pack of crayons, just choose the closest color to, we want like a bright red color. I'm gonna start light. What I mean by that is if I look at the raspberry, it's all red, but there's some light reds and there's some dark reds. There's some towards the bottom right, it's darker. And on each one of those little bumps, there's a white area almost, like a slight fuzz look to it. So I'm actually gonna do a little bit more pink, yeah, something like that. I'm gonna do that color first and then lay the darks on top of it. So now I'm gonna switch my from a pencil to, I'm gonna go to my painting area, and I'm gonna do, let's see, something that's kind of like paint. Let's do gouache. I just got some gouache, so I'm sure this doesn't act like real gouache, but cool. So I'm gonna paint here and paint this whole, you'll notice the color I chose is much lighter. It's a pink. But again, this is kind of the under drawing for it. Sorry, not the under drawing, but this is the highlights, and I'm gonna get the darks on top. Put a little bit of this here, and a little bit of this here. Those are the light areas of those two raspberries. Now I'm gonna do the darker red. Just test that color out. Sometimes actually I have one here. When I'm painting, I keep a strip of paper. See this? And then I do one kind of brush stroke on it. This one's been used a lot. And then I'll hold it up to the picture that I'm painting, whatever it may be, or whatever I'm trying to match. And I'll hold it up. I think I was trying to get a skin tone with these ones. I'll hold it up and like, oh, it's a little bit too pink. Then I'll adjust it, and then I'll do another stroke. And then hold it up. Oh, it's a little bit too dark. And I'll adjust it, and then So this is a really nice tool, is just to take a strip of paper when you're painting. You could try to do the same thing with pencils or crayons too, because sometimes the color of the crayon is actually different than you'd think it might be. So yeah, use a test strip so that you can get the right color. Okay. And I'm gonna do a bright red here, and make my brush a little smaller. And now I can focus on the shape of these. I don't know what to call them. The juice balls on the outside of a raspberry. This are they? They're not seeds. They're not hard. If you know what those are called, let me know because I don't actually know. So I'm looking at the pattern on the front of a raspberry of the dark red, which to me looks almost like a zigzaggy kind of thing. It's like this, for instance, something like that, like a checkerboard-ish, but not so regular. So I'm gonna keep that in mind and try to draw that in as best as possible. I'm gonna count how many tall it is. One at the bottom, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's about 6 of those little orbs tall. At the bottom, there's 3. So I'm gonna start at the bottom. There's 1 kind of thing here, 2 and 3, and then they kind of spiral around this way. So what I mean is, I'll draw the next one, 2, 3, 4. Then they start to get bigger up here. 5, 6, and they kind of come around here. So see how I kind of went up and diagonal that way? That's going to be what I do for the next one. 1. Let's see. I'm looking at each one, trying to match, because they are slightly different shapes from one another. They're not all square or circle or any kind of regular shape. So I'm looking at the raspberry picture to try and get close to, oops, not my eraser. Get close to the shapes. But again, it doesn't matter if you're exact on this kind of drawing, painting. Let's put in all these things. And there's one here. And there's like kind of a big one here. This one comes up and around. So you can see how I put in that pink first. How I'm painting on top of it. So it's almost a puzzle. Like you have to work backwards with painting sometimes, to make it easy on yourself. So instead of doing the white on top, especially if you're watercoloring, you have to think this way and kind of plan out which colors should I go first. Come up with a game plan. I just watched a whole documentary on a living artist, David Hockney, who's an amazing painter. If you ever get a chance to look up David Hockney. But he said that he would spend 6 hours a day on his portraits, and then he'd go home and look at them all night in his bedroom. He'd take a picture of them, and he'd look at the picture of them. And then the next day when he went to work on it, he would be ready, because he would know exactly what he needed to do, and he wouldn't have to guess. So it's good to just look at your painting sometimes for a while and decide, what's the game plan? What am I going to do next to make these raspberries? And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm looking at them. I'm going to continue the raspberries on the side, which, because I'm seeing at an angle, I'm seeing a slightly different shape, and they're smaller, these little circles. And there's less of the light area. So I'm actually just going to fill this in with red, because there's that light pink that I drew on the other ones. There's only that at the edges of this, but not really down here. So I can fill that right in. Okay? So now that I got the outlines of those, I can sort of round them out a little bit, because now they look like outlines of these little things. So in order to round them out, I need to think about form, and I need to think about where the light's coming from. And I can think about it, or I can just look. And I can see all of, it looks like the light's coming from the top, maybe the front, and where the white areas of the fuzz on the raspberry, that's the parts I want to leave this pink white on but the rest of it I want to kind of color in. So I'm starting at the top here, and I'm coloring in the bottom and the right side of each of these little spheres. So the bottom and the right, and being kind of light with my pencil here, or my brush. If I was painting, I would blend the two colors together. But if you're drawing or coloring, you just want to kind of go from light to dark, sort of like this. So see on the side there, I went from light to dark. That's really good practice. But yeah, you kind of use that method to blend these little orbs a little bit, and towards the top they have more of that white fuzz, and then as we get to the bottom of the raspberry, I'm almost gonna just fill them all the way in, and they're getting a little bit of reflection from the ground towards the bottom, so it's almost the reverse pattern, where they're mostly red but a little bit of that pink at the very bottom of these shapes. It's interesting. That's like a reflected light off of the cat. So just working my way through this. There's a lot of light coming from the left side here. So let's just do that. Boop, boop, boop. Coloring them all in, color them all in. I try to keep talking while I'm drawing these, but I find if I'm talking, I make more mistakes with my pencil. But if I don't talk, then you guys have nothing to listen to. So forgive my mistakes. All right. Cool. So that's a pretty general shading on that one. Let's do the other ones real quick on the side. Don't need much work on these. Just a little bit of blend from the light to dark. I'm only blending one direction, so you still have kind of a hard edge on one side and a blend on the other way. Okay, now before I get to the green, I want to see what I could do different here. First of all, I think now there's a even darker color I can get, which is more maybe purple and definitely darker. So I'm gonna go maybe not that purple, maybe like here. Let's test this out here. Yeah, I think that's about what I want. So this is kind of where the raspberry comes into shadow, which is this raspberry on the right. There's a lot of it. Towards this side. And this is almost doing the same thing with the little sections. Let's go to the left one now. Do just like little shapes. Now the bottom of my main raspberry. And I'm looking back and forth at my reference raspberry to make sure I put the dark areas where they're supposed to be. I don't want to put a dark area on, the wrong side, because that would ruin the illusion of it being three-dimensional. Where you place your shadows is pretty important. And sometimes I find myself freestyling, not looking at the picture, and if I'm not really being careful or paying attention, I'll put the shadow in like a weird spot, and it'll just feel off. It just won't look as as believable. All right, that's decent. You can see my drawing is still much lighter than my reference, so I think I'm gonna try to change that a little bit by just drawing over some of these light areas in the middle, 'cause that looks like where the most difference is. I'm just drawing over with a middle tone, not a dark red, not a light red, something in the middle. Something like that. Cool. Alright, I'm happy with that. Nothing wrong with this raspberry so far. Now, let's do the leaves now. So this is one thing cool about strawberries and raspberries is they're naturally red and green, which are complete opposites on the color wheel. If you can see, color wheel at the top right, red's on the right side, green's on the exact opposite. So that gives it automatically a lot of contrast, and that's awesome. With the leaves, I'm going to start with the darker green that I see in the leaf, which is kind of maybe a little bit of a yellow green and dark, so somewhere around here. Yeah, that looks good. And I'm going to just fill the whole leaf with this color. And I can see that the edges of the leaves have these little spikes on them, but I'm not going to do those yet. I'm just gonna be really rough and just get it in. But I am gonna look at the edge of my raspberry here and make sure I get these round shapes on both sides. So, yep, there we go. Just generally get the shape. Okay. The thing on top is is more of a light yellow green, so I'm gonna treat that kind of separately. Maybe just do a little bit towards the base of this color. Yeah, but it's not really the same color as the leaves. The same kind of green. So now that I've got the dark areas of the leaves, now I'm going to look at the light, which is the main color of these leaves, which is a little bit yellower than the color I just used, and certainly brighter. I'm painting raspberries, just like the ones you just ate, Olive. They have leaves on them still, yep. Olive's in the room with me, asked me what I was painting. So I'm going to zoom in here, get a closer look at this leaf. And one mistake I want to kind of teach against is you can see all the veins in the leaves, and I see people kind of doing this a lot where they'll try to just draw the veins. And look at how that leaf just doesn't, I mean, I guess that would work. But to me, I haven't really used that type of line anywhere else in the painting, so it just feels really out of place to do that. So I prefer something different where I paint the dark part in instead of painting the lines on top. And now I'm going to, talking to people that are watching, I'm gonna draw the shapes in the leaf like this that I see. So I see they're more rectangular shapes, and I'm gonna leave space where the lines are. And let's see if this effect is a little bit more believable than if I was just drawing lines. So essentially I'm just painting with light right now. This is the light hitting these leaves. And I'm just painting where the light is shining on these leaves. Something like that. Alright. There we go. Yeah, something like that. The color I chose isn't quite yellow enough, and isn't quite saturated enough, so I'm gonna actually go over that slightly. Let's see if this helps. I'll be rough and quick with it. Yeah, that's a little closer. Then I'll do the other leaf over here. Let's see. Again, I'm not paying attention to the edges yet because I know that I'm gonna go in with the background next, and I can clean up all my edges. Okay, go ahead, sweetie. I can clean up the edges with my background. There. Yeah, that feels more cohesive than if I would have drawn those lines in. Let's go ahead and do the stem. So the stem is, again, lighter color and slightly more pale and slightly more yellow. So maybe like this. Let's try this color. And I'm going to be careful around my be careful around the raspberry. I don't want to paint over that red. Shapes that I made that were so nice. And like that. Cool. And then there's some shaded areas of this, so I'm just going to darken that color. If you were using paint, you would just add a little bit of maybe blue or green or some kind of dark color, brown. If you're with crayons, maybe just lightly draw out a darker color onto the bottom areas of these leaves. Yeah, something like that. Alright, one last thing before I get to the background is I like to go in with white or something nearing white, and now just touch up the whole thing with little highlights of lightness. I did this with the watercolors too, and that really brought them to life. So I see at the top left of these raspberries, that's where the fuzzy lightness is. So that's what I'm going to add in. Check this out. Like this. And look at how this really just brings to life that fuzziness of the raspberries. And most fruits I've found have, or most anything, could use with little highlight accents just to really show where the light's coming from and to add some contrast. Looks like some of these little globes have just like a dot of light on it like this. So I'm going to do that on a few of them. That, and then on the right side, it's not so bright, so I'm actually going to leave that, and I'll come in with a slightly dimmer highlight. I'm going into the raspberry on the left. And now I'm going into the raspberry on the right with, I'm going to darken this highlight to a little bit of a gray. Not much of a gray though, it's still pretty much white. Just because I don't want. So the highlights on the right of this main raspberry and on that right raspberry. You can see how kind of sketchy I'm being. I'm not really concerned with getting the lines right or even completely coloring in the lines. If I get a little bit out of the lines, it's okay. Since it's a painting, it's really those little inconsistencies that give you your your style. So the things you mess up tend to be the things people like about your art, which is fun and kind of freeing when I started realizing that, like, wait a second, I don't have to do things perfect. I have to do things, you know, creatively. Okay, time for the background. So this will be fun. The background is, of course, white in the picture to the left, but I'm gonna try to choose a color. And I know red and green are very bright colors. Maybe I should do a color that's not in the raspberry, like a blue, a pale blue. So when I gotta erase. I thought I could paint right over this guy here, but it looks like I'm gonna have to erase it. Okay. So let me go in with this blue around and see if that looks good. I already like it against the raspberry. I'm going with a big brush first. This is what I usually do with my paintings too. I go in with a big brush and get as much area as I can with big strokes. Because in painting, those big strokes are really nice and they look confident when instead of using little strokes all the time. Use the big strokes where you can. So, and then when I get closer to my subject, oops, it looks like I drew over the leaf a little bit. That's okay, I'll fix it. When I get close to the subject, speaking of it, I need to be really careful so I don't paint over what I just painted in the raspberry. This can be kind of a destructive process. So now I want to be careful, so I'm going to bring my size down and go in around my edges. And now is where I will actually get those spikes. So now that I have the colors all right in the leaf, it's a little easier, I think, to just carve in those spikes instead of trying to draw them outwards. This, this type of brush I'm using is proving to be a little bit difficult because it doesn't cover up my color on the first stroke. I have to paint on it twice, but that's on me. Alright, so what I'm doing is just quickly kind of making a jagged edge by painting the blue over the green on top of it, just straight on top. Like that. Now I see looks a little bit rough around the edges, but that's okay. Look, can't you see the pokey edges of the leaves now? And it's a little bit rough, but it looks nice and painted, huh? And I prefer doing it that way, coloring the background over the foreground instead of trying to get a sharp angle of with the green. This tends to be a little easier. So now I painted over this accidentally, so I'm just gonna make the leaf a little smaller, and nobody except for you will know that I did that. All right, something like that. Now with some paints, like watercolors, you can't fully paint over something and correct your mistakes like this. But I find with like most things you can. With pencil, if you make a mistake, you can erase, of course. But even with pencil, if you don't want to erase, you can just draw a darker line or draw a darker background and squeeze in, and it'll cover your lighter line right up that you messed up. So you can kind of erase by drawing everything darker. Now I went over these guys a little bit too, so I'm just going to make that stem a little shorter. Just coloring. This is fun and kind of relaxing to do. Painting is, coloring. Drawing is, I find, the drawing aspect of it is not as relaxing. It's more, um, way more brain power to draw something. But then the painting part of it, when you're just going in with colors, you do have to pay attention. But I find it more relaxing, the painting stage. Just because a lot of it is just, okay, I gotta fill this whole area with blue. And it's just gonna take a while, but it's not like I have to think about which color I'm using every stroke. Unless it's that type of painting I'm trying to go for. Some painters think about every stroke and mix a different color for every single brush stroke. And it takes years to finish those. But I'm more of a hasty person and a quick painter. I like to just get it done. Alright. Just cleaning up the edges. Now, that's pretty good. That's good background. I think this is almost done. I think the last thing I will do here is just do a little shadow. So, since the shadow is since the background is blue, I want to go a little bit darker and grayer with the shadow. I don't want to do a black shadow. Just a little darker and grayer. And then, I want to reflect the red of the raspberry. A lot of times shadows will be slightly reflected. So I'm going to just move towards the red, which will make a purple shadow. So I got this. Ooh, this might be a little dark. But I'll start with this and then I'll go lighter. Something like that. Now I need to go a little bit back this way. A little bit lighter. A little lighter. Yeah, oops, maybe a little darker than that. Alright, now I'm just going to use my little blendy tool. Oops. But I'm going to make it look like the rest of it. Painting, gouache. Okay. Oops. This just keeps it consistent. So I'm just going to blend this shadow out because I didn't like how it looked exactly like I did it. That's why I like working with oil paints, because you can do kind of like what I'm doing here and just push the paint around a little bit if you want. I mean, you can definitely get carried away and just do this for hours, but something like that. I'm just gonna paint a little bit now of the background color. Right, just clean up those shadow shapes. Make them more oval, which is kind of the shape they look like in the picture here. It's funny, for whatever reason, the big raspberry has a smaller shadow than the two back ones. So I'm pretty sure somebody put those shadows in the photo editing process. Alright, but there we go. I think that's good. What do you guys think? I think that's good. So that's enough for the raspberry. I think I got the fuzziness of it. Ooh, one thing I actually forgot that I'm just seeing now that I'm looking back and forth is the little tiny hairs. It looks like yellow hairs sticking out of the raspberry. So I'm excited to do that. That seems like fun. Okay. So I'm going to go, it looks like every single one of these little, I keep referring to them. These little things have a little tiny yellow hair sticking out of it. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to have fun with it. And make them, I could even do something fun and have like my name in it. No, none of them look like they're curved into an M shape, but there's just little curlies or S shapes kind of going around. I'll try to do M, I, C. I don't know if I should do an H. There's an MIC and maybe a Curl here, okay here. Yeah, it's the little things sometimes. Oh, all these little hairs. Why I was excited about the hairs, and I like this type of thing. Things that are really easy to draw, but have a big payoff as far as how the drawing looks. Those are my favorite things. Like little hairs, where it doesn't matter where I draw them. You might not be able to see them very well, but they're there. And I think that really solidifies, like, ooh, that's a raspberry. So I'm going to draw little hairs on the back ones too. But they're not as visible. All right, cool. So I've got 20 minutes left. I think I will try another fruit. I'll try... I was going to do an artichoke, but that's not a fruit. So we'll do a strawberry. So let me go start a new thing here. And we're going to do a quicker strawberry this time. So let me find the strawberry. That's an artichoke. I chose artichoke, or I was considering it because... What the heck? Because they're in season right now. And they're delicious. I just had some the other day. Okay. So, strawberry. First, again, we're going to draw. So, pull out your pencil for the drawing stage. And usually I'm really careful with my proportions, but I think I'm going to just totally eyeball this shape. And the more you try to draw something, and if you're not able to eyeball it quite as quickly, if you just practice doing that, just try to draw things by looking at them, you'll get better at the proportions. But you have to do it a lot to be bad. I still am not great at it, but getting better and more confident. I'm going to do this. But you always want to, or I suggest that you want to draw the line where that will be the easiest to draw next. So look at, don't draw, for instance, I wouldn't want to draw something on one side of a person, then go draw his head and then go all the way down to the feet or something. Or on these strawberries, I don't want to do, I wouldn't do both of the stems because they're not connected and one doesn't help me draw the other. So once you draw your first line, that should help you draw the rest of your lines. Like building blocks. One should lead to the next. All right, that's a pretty good sketch. I think if this was on a canvas and I was ready to paint, I think, oh yeah, that's fine, that'll work. So now let's get to painting. And I'm going to use a different type of paintbrush on this. Let's try Salamanca. Nah, not Salamanca. That's a weird looking one. How about acrylic? Okay, acrylic's fine. Yeah. And I'm going to try with this strawberry, I'm going to try to be really loose and kind of have with the raspberry, let's see, where's my raspberry? I think it's this one. Oh my gosh. With my raspberry, what the heck? Image 3? Image 4. Oh my gosh, there it is. Yeah. With the raspberry, I decided to be a little more careful with all my lines and everything, but this, I'm going to try to be as expressive and use the biggest brush I can. So this brush, I couldn't get any details with this brush, but what I can get is it kind of has a nice look to it. When you get small brushes, you can't really see the detail in the brush, you just get the color. So I kind of want the detail in the brush. So with that in mind, I'm gonna need to do this painting quicker, and a little more free, but also be careful about each stroke. Um, so let's decide on a size to stick with. I think something like that, where I can see the little strokes of it. Looks nice. All right, so for the same reason I did the sky last time, I'm actually gonna do the green first this time. I'll show you why. So let me just color these in, and I'm gonna try not to go over my own brush strokes too much, so that I can keep this look free. So each stroke I'm looking, which direction does it need to go? Does it need to go down? Does it need to go up? Sideways? Something like that. Okay. Alright, that's good. Now I'm going to do the red of the strawberry. So, yeah, I think that'll work if I just kind of follow the contour of the strawberry with each stroke. So, oops. There we go. Got that. I'm going to do the same on the other one. Again, this time I'm being oops. As I'm talking. It's hard for me to talk and do this. I'm being more careful not to go over my strokes. I'm trying to do these strawberries in more of a stylistic way, whereas the raspberries I went more for almost a realistic way. The strawberries now, we're gonna try to do them more stylized. Okay, so now, like the last time, I'm gonna do a darker color, slightly more purple for the shadow area. There we go. Going over all the areas of dark I see. Trying to match it closely on my other picture, but without futzing too much, without going over my areas too much. Now I'm gonna do a brighter red and do the highlights. Looks like my strawberry is a little orange. So I'm gonna go a little bit towards the purple side. Let's see. There we go. That's a little bit more strawberry. So I'm gonna go ahead and follow. Just do the areas that are the brightest red. Where are those? So the brightest red there. This back strawberry has a lot of bright red in it. There. And now I'm gonna go for the white, the light pink color that's in the highlights. So something like that. And that shape is something like. So this is the reflection of the light now. And then there's a reflection of the ground, which is slightly more white. There. Something like that. All right. Don't worry. I haven't forgot about the seeds. That's going to be the next step here. And I think that the seeds will really bring it to life too. So for seeds, they are what? Yellow green maybe? Yellow greens. Is that about the right color? I think that looks like about the right color. So I've got that, and this won't. Now I'm gonna have to go to a smaller brush. But looking at the shape of them, they're not squares. They're not circles. They're more of this, well, seed shape. Um, and I think actually I'm gonna need a different brush for this because this one is not gonna work. So let's see if I can make a convincing looking seed shape, something like that. That's a little bit small. I want to be able to do it in one brush stroke, just like that. Yep. Change the color a little bit more gray, maybe. There we go. Now, the pattern of seeds, are they randomly spaced, or are they in lines? I don't know. I haven't really looked that closely at a strawberry. It looks like they're kind of, they follow a path, but then there's some that break the path as far as the pattern of seeds. So I don't know that I can match it exactly, but I can be informed by it and try to match the shape a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at my drawing. I'm more concerned with which direction these little seeds are pointing, which they seem to be pointing towards the bottom of the strawberry. Pretty much all of them point that direction, which is that diagonal to the left direction. I'm not going to count every single one of these, but I am trying to get the approximate frequency of them. About as many as there is, but not by counting, just by looking at the direction they're going and the shape of them. They're a little bit more spread out up here at the top. Alright, now the back one, those actually point diagonal to the right. Even kind of come around at the top. Isn't it nice to just to actually look at something when you're drawing it? That's my favorite thing about drawing, is that I actually get to like really pay attention to what's going on visually with these things. All right. So now there's actually a little bit of shadow on each of these seeds, and if you think I'm actually gonna do that, you're right. Because I have a few minutes. So let's see. Instead of doing the shadow, let's see. I could either do a shadow or try to make them look like they're in an indent, and I think the indent is probably the way to go. So I'm gonna go back to red, and what I mean is doing this shape first above, and then at the bottom it's actually below them. Doing this kind of cup shape above them makes them more look like they're sunken in, like they are into the strawberry. And it's not around all of them. And I'm trying to pay attention. It's definitely around the top of the top ones and around the bottom of the lowest ones. So that's where I'm gonna concentrate. So yeah, you can see I'm kind of breaking apart what makes this strawberry, what makes the elements of it look the way they do. I'm not really concerned with making it look exactly like that strawberry, but how, is it the seeds being indented? Does that make a big difference in the look of a strawberry to you? Maybe not make a big difference, but it certainly helps the illusion. So I'm interested in trying to, when painting, trying to get the illusion of something looking correct or believable. Not realistic necessarily, but believable. but in a simple way, which is, I think, these strawberries I'm pretty happy with so far in that regard. All right. I want to go in with a yellow or green on the stems because I see that color. Oops. But I want to go back to the gouache paintbrush too, just to keep things consistent. And keep the brush pretty big. Oh man, that's not good. There we go. And there. No, I think the last thing I want to do is just add the dark. There's in the stems, just to get like the shadows of where they overlap and stuff. Because I think it's kind of missing that. So just simple things, and then we'll do the background, and then this guy is done in just in time for the hour. And this goes over here. Cool. Now, background time. I'm actually going to switch back to the round brush, flat brush, whatever. And let's do another blue background. I really liked it last time, so I'm going to do even maybe a dark blue background. So, again, use a big brush to cover as much area as you can. And then be more careful once you get close. So now I'm getting close, so I gotta be careful with the edges. I can actually make this stem slightly thinner, and I can make all of these, all of the stem area and the leaves, I can make them thinner or more sharp with the background, which is what I did with the last one. And that's kind of the powerful technique, is cutting in with your background to make everything. It's really the background that makes everything look professional to me and clean. It takes it from being a sketch to maybe a finished piece when it's involved in a background. Looks like the outside of a strawberry is fairly round. It's a little bumpy, but I think that'll happen naturally with my hand being a little bit shaky. All right. Yeah. Almost done. 2 more minutes. I can do it. Oh, shoot. Mm-hmm. And this one. So close. Oops. There. I think that's pretty good strobs for being quickly. Watch this. You can watch the replay. Quick replay. That's cool. And then we're done. So thank you guys. Leave in the comments what you want me to draw next time, and have a great weekend.